I'm going to tell it the way it happened. Not the way the headlines tried to dress it up late afternoon on Harbor Avenue. Bayfield whined off the water. In my face, Mateo strapped warm to my chest, stroller wheels, ticking like a metronome. And then a city bus screaming too fast. A 4-year-old alone in the crosswalk, with those little light-up sneakers blinking like a flare. People froze. I didn't. I ran. Hooked my arm around the kid and rolled us under heat and steel sparks, kissing the asphalt, rubber, and metal in my nose, my elbows burning, my baby howling. And when the world slammed still and hands dragged us into the light, I saw him, the father, gray suit, cold eyes, the Bentley still coughing at the curb, Grayson Hale, billionaire of the stainless kind, looking at his son. In my arms, looking at my baby on my chest, and fear flipped into something uglier. "What were you thinking?" he snapped, like he'd hired me to stage a miracle. And yeah, that happened. The slap happened too, quick and bright. A crack across my cheek that made the street go church quiet. And the boy in my arms whispered one word that landed like a stone dropped in a well, Mama. The house after that felt like winter, even with the heat on. I kept my head down, folded, towels wiped, counters rocked. Mateo stayed out of Mr. Hale's way, while Theo, that was the boy's name, shadowed me room to room like a small moon, fingers catching the edge of my shirt, breath fogging the fabric. Sometimes brave enough to whisper safe, sometimes only humming along, to the little tune my grandmother used when Fresno went dark. You know what I mean? That hum that says the adults are scared too, but we're going to pretend we're not. And one night, he stood in the nursery doorway, like a man guarding himself from his own house, and asked why Theo called me that, not angry, just tired. Then he went looking for answers, in the only place a man like that trusts the cameras, the archives, the old hard drives. And there she was, on his screen, his late wife bare feet on the patio, hair up, coffee in hand, laughing with me back when I was a neighbor picking up hours. Because sickness was grinding her down, me rocking baby. Theo, while she dozed, me humming that same tune, her hand on my knee saying, "Your family here even if he doesn't see it yet." And when the footage ended, he didn't posture. He sat like the chair was the only thing keeping him from the floor and said what he had to say. "I hit you, and I doubted you for saving my son, and I told him what I had to tell the mirror first. You can't buy back trust, you can only live it." The next morning, he gathered the staff and broke his own rules. No lawyer, no podium, just a man with his pride bleeding. "Ava Delgado is not staff, she is caretaker of my son. Her boy, Mateo, is welcome in any room in this house if that's a problem. Bring it to me and bring your resignation with it." A few faces softened, one froze into a smile sharp enough to cut Clive Mercer, estate manager discipline, like cologne, poor people an infection. In his worldview, he clapped with his lips, not his hands, and the knives slid under the table while the surface stayed smooth. Rumors breed in quiet, first a blog photo me with Mateo in a sling, and Theo on my hip, headlined "Hale finds new family." Then a pawn shop smear with doctored pictures that looked just real enough to stain your name, a woman. At Kiat the tomatoes, saying, "Nice job securing the bag," and me biting my cheek till I tasted metal. So I wouldn't give her a quote to frame Mr. Hale took a stand at the front gate iron between us and the cameras. "She saved my son, if you need a narrative. Write that it helped for a minute." But the board of Hale Venture Group speaks a language stronger than truth when it wants to. They invited him to a crisis meeting and offered him a clean return in exchange for my absence. And he came home with the kind of tired that bends a back for good and said, "They wanted a choice, I told them. I'd already made it." And I believed him until the next storm. It came with flashes by the park fountain, a microphone with teeth, men crowding us, Theo shrinking into my leg, and Mateo wailing, "Mr." Hale planted himself between us and the swarm and said they could ask him anything, but they would not touch me or the kids, Reed. The security chief cut us a path and got us home. And that night, the house felt like a drum you hear with your bones, read on the radio, East Perimeter, 3 intruders, glass became teeth, the dresser became a shield. The lock squealed, a man's shoulder hit the door, Theo whispered. Safe, Mama, and I told my throat to hold, then a body with a knife, a scream with his name in it. Grayson hit that man like a century. He didn't belong to the knife, skittered 2 more men in a fight outside the frame, zip ties and curses and sirens. And when the blue lights bathed the hedges, the word Clive fell out of a mouth like a cough. The evidence later was boring and thorough. Payments and files and a thread to an old rival promising the house would implode. Clive walked into court with his chin up and his wrists together, and the city did what cities do. It moved on. We didn't move on so much as learn a slower walk. Trust is a rope you grip with tired hands day after day. He tried without noise, breakfast at the table instead of alone in the glass office, stumbling through the same picture book, until Theo corrected his dragon voice and laughed, like laughter was returning to his muscles. Church with folded arms, watching us a town hall, where he held a mic that squealed and said, Plain, I failed, a woman who deserved better, and I'm trying to be worthy of the family. My pride almost broke a gala he used to own, where the host tried to box him into a neat soundbite, and he said, family isn't blood or last names, it's who throws their body under a bus for your child, and then hums them to sleep. And the applause wasn't thunder. It was rain, soft, but enough to make things grow. There was a night the power died, and candles made the kitchen. Honest dishwater warm our arms, brushing as I washed, and he dried. No performance, no strategy, just the kind of small chore that tells the truth. Do you ever think about leaving? He asked, taking Matteo and finding quieter. And I told him the truth that stung every day, then every day. I look at Theo and decide to stay one more. He nodded like someone had finally handed him instructions, and the board tested him again, with the same offer wrapped in nicer paper. They offered me everything. If I gave you up, he said at dusk, with the bay going gold, and when I asked if he considered it, there was a heartbeat of silence we both heard. He said it passed. I didn't forgive on the spot, but the rope got easier to hold. We opened the gate on purpose one weekend, lanterns in the trees, kids racing the grass that used to know only golf shoes. Some neighbors came to gawk and left with paper plates and different opinions. Some came to test him and said, charity and romance don't mix. He smiled without teeth and said his son's voice mattered more than his name on a building. And later, when the last guest drifted down the driveway, Theo asleep with his cheek on my leg, and Matteo snoring against my shoulder. He sat on the stone bench and didn't make a speech. I'm not asking you to forget Harbor Avenue, he said into the warm dark. I'm asking you to let me be the man who turns the car around before the light ever changes. I told him to prove it day by day until the house believed him, until Matteo did, until I did. And somewhere between then and a storm at 3 a.m., thunder punching the windows, both boys crying in stereo, his bad dragon voice on one side and my old Fresno hum on the other. Theo wedged between us and whispered a new word that felt like a finish line, Daddy. He stared at the ceiling like a man trying not to frighten a miracle. And I watched his shoulders lower in a way that wasn't defeat, it was surrender to the right thing. Morning put gold on the kitchen tile. Mrs. Wynne flipped pancakes like a blessing. Matteo banged a spoon. Theo leaned into me with trust that wasn't borrowed anymore, and Grayson said we could close the gate or even leave the city that watched us bleed. I told him Gates kept the wrong things out for too long. I wanted neighbors and noise. I wanted the world to watch us build something louder than whispers. We didn't sign a contract or stage a ring. We just lived loud and regular. There's a picture in my head I carry like a lucky coin, lanterns still swaying, Matteo in his arms laughing, Theo racing circles with unmatched socks, Mrs. Wynne at the window, threatening his billionaire hide if he scuffs her floor, and me at the glass, thinking one simple word: I never thought this house could mean home. Here's the part that makes comment sections catch fire. Do you forgive a man who slapped a woman in public because he learned to read bedtime stories and take a punch for her kids? Or is that exactly what mercy is for, transforming people who did the worst version of themselves into the ones they should have been all along, yeah? I stayed one day and then another, until the days added up to a life. Some mornings, I grab that rope easy. Some mornings I miss it and start over. But when two little voices breathe safe into the dark, the argument in my chest goes quiet. Tell me where you land, redemption, or a beautiful con that accidentally built a family. Drop a comment. With the moment you changed your mind about someone or a town, changed its mind about you. Hit like if you felt the turn, share it. If you've watched a house like this crack and then heal, and tell me what justice looks like when money and power finally have to answer to love.